I always imagined buying my first home would feel like crossing a finish line. Years of grinding at my job, skipping vacations, living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment with paper, thin walls. It was all supposed to lead to that one sweet moment where I'd put down the keys on a new counter and whisper, finally, I made it. That dream felt so close the day my mother called, her voice bright with the kind of excitement she rarely showed anymore. Emma, sweetheart, your brother found something amazing, a house, and not just any house, a steal. You won't believe the price. Her words poured into my ear like honey, thick and sweet, dripping with a promise I was desperate to taste. My brother, Daniel, was a realtor, the golden child of the family. He was everything I wasn't: charming, smooth, talking, the kind of man who could walk into a room and have people leaning toward him within minutes. He had always been good at convincing others, and now it seemed I was his latest project. That evening, we all met outside the house. It was a little two-story place at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, with white shutters and a small, overgrown yard. It wasn't glamorous, but it had character, the kind of home that looked like it had stories waiting in its walls. Look at it, Daniel said, spreading his arms like a magician revealing his final trick. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a basement, and that porch. Come on, Emma. You can already see yourself sipping coffee there in the mornings, can't you? I laughed nervously, trying not to let my doubts show. The siding looked a little too freshly painted, and the grass near the foundation was patchy, as if hiding something. But I wanted to believe him. God, I needed to believe him. Mom squeezed my arm and added softly, Sweetheart, you deserve this. You've been working so hard. Don't second guess it. Sometimes blessings just arrive. Her words tugged at something deep inside me. She hadn't been supportive of many of my choices before, so hearing her say I deserved this, it felt like approval I had been chasing for years. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, sharp enough to sting my nose. The hardwood floors gleamed and the walls were freshly painted in soft neutrals. Daniel walked me from room to room, pointing out features like a salesman who already knew the deal was sealed. Brand new paint job, he said, and the basement, it's unfinished, but that's an opportunity. You could turn it into anything. A guest suite, a studio, even a gym. I nodded, my head spinning with possibilities. My own studio, a space for me. No more sharing laundry machines with nosy neighbors. No more rent payments that disappeared into someone else's pocket. But then a thought intruded. Why is this house so cheap? I asked Daniel quietly, Are you sure it's not too good to be true? He flashed me his trademark smile, the one that had probably sold 100 houses before this one. Emma, listen, houses like this don't stay on the market long. If you wait, it'll be gone. And trust me, I wouldn't let you walk into something bad. I'm your brother. I've got your back. Mom chimed in again, almost impatiently. He's right. Don't overthink it, Emma. Opportunities like this don't knock twice. The pressure pressed down on me. 2 people I should have trusted the most stood there, united, their eyes bright with conviction. My doubts felt small against the weight of their certainty. I took a deep breath, looked around one last time, and let my guard slip. All right, I whispered. Let's do it. Daniel grinned like he had just won something, and Mom hugged me tightly, whispering into my ear, This is the start of your new life. I wanted so badly to believe her. That night, lying in bed in my tiny apartment, I stared at the ceiling, imagining what it would feel like to unlock the door to my house. To decorate it, to invite friends over and hear laughter bouncing off the walls, to finally have a place where I belonged. I didn't know then that the walls I had fallen in love with were already rotting beneath their fresh paint. That the foundation I thought would hold me up was already cracked. That the people smiling at me, telling me I was stepping into a dream, were walking me straight into a nightmare. But in that moment, all I felt was hope, and the dangerous warmth of trust. The keys jingled in my hand as I stood at the doorway of my new house, heart pounding with the kind of joy that makes your chest ache. I turned the lock, stepped inside, and whispered to myself, "Home." The word felt foreign but beautiful on my tongue. Boxes lined the entryway, stacked with everything I owned: clothes, books, dishes, the little trinkets I'd collected over the years. My apartment landlord had barely said goodbye when I dropped off my keys. It didn't matter. This was supposed to be the start of something new, a chapter of independence. The first day passed in a blur of unpacking and rearranging. I set up my bed, unpacked my kitchen, where even hung a framed photo of my parents and me from when I was a child. The three of us smiling on a beach vacation, sand between our toes, before life got messy. Looking at it, I felt a flicker of warmth. Maybe this house really was a gift, a sign that things were turning around. But that night, the storm came. It started with distant thunder, low rumbles rolling across the dark sky. Rain tapped against the windows, then hammered harder, as if 1,000 tiny fists were pounding to get inside. I tried to ignore it, curled up on my mattress with a book, telling myself storms were cozy in a new house. Then came the smell, a damp, sour stench wafted through the air, earthy, suffocating, unmistakably wet. My stomach dropped. I set the book aside and followed the smell, my bare feet cold against the hardwood. By the time I reached the basement door, I could hear it, the steady drip, drip, drip of water. My hand trembled as I pushed the door open. The sight knocked the breath out of me. Water gushed in through cracks in the foundation, pooling into a shallow lake across the basement floor. Boxes I had stacked down there earlier floated like pathetic little rafts, my belongings already soaked through. The walls looked swollen, water, stained beneath their new paint, and black streaks of mold peeked from corners where the brush hadn't reached. I stumbled down the stairs, wading ankle, deep into the icy water, trying to salvage what I could. But it was hopeless. The water kept pouring in, relentless, mocking me with every new stream that trickled down the wall. I grabbed my phone and dialed Daniel, hands shaking. He answered on the second ring, sounding half asleep. "Me, Daniel, the basement, it's flooding. There's water everywhere. You said this house was fine." "Daniel," sighing, "relax, Emma. Basements get damp. It's normal." "Me, normal? Daniel, my stuff is floating down here. There's mold already showing through the paint. Were you even honest about this house?" "Daniel, you're overreacting. All houses have quirks. That's why it was such a good deal. You just need a sump pump. Easy fix." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. His voice was calm, dismissive, as if my panic was nothing but an inconvenience. "Me, you knew, didn't you? You knew about this." "Daniel," after a pause, "Emma, listen. It's not a big deal. Every homeowner deals with stuff like this. You wanted independence, right? This is part of it." My chest burned, anger and betrayal mixing, until I thought I might scream. I hung up and called Mom, hoping, praying, she'd be different. She answered with her familiar warmth, but when I explained, her response was worse. "Mom, oh, Emma, calm down. Daniel said it's minor. You're lucky to even have a house. Most people your age can't afford one. Be grateful, grateful." That word cut deeper than the water soaking my socks. Be grateful for a house that was rotting from the inside out. Be grateful that my savings had gone into a nightmare. I wanted to scream, but instead, I sat on the bottom step of the basement stairs, the cold water lapping at my ankles, phone still in my hand. For the first time, the truth began to crack through the illusion. This wasn't an accident. The too good to be true price, the freshly painted walls, the way Daniel had rushed me into signing. My mother's constant reassurances, her insistence that I shouldn't think too much, they had known. I pressed my palms into my face, fighting the urge to sob. This house wasn't a gift, it was a trap, and the people who led me into it were the very ones who were supposed to protect me. Lightning flashed outside the small basement window, illuminating the water that reflected like a mirror. In it, I saw not just my broken reflection, but something darker rising inside me, the first seed of anger. It was small now, but it was alive, and it would grow. I woke the next morning to silence, the kind that presses on your chest like a weight. My body ached from sleeping curled on the couch. My bed upstairs still felt foreign, and besides, the thought of water creeping beneath my feet kept me awake all night. When I finally went down to the basement, the damage hit me all over again. The water had receded, but the smell lingered, pungent, moldy, sharp enough to sting my nose. The floor was covered in a film of mud and debris, and the walls looked bruised, blotched with damp stains. My boxes were ruined, books swelled like sponges, pages rippling into warped, unreadable waves. Clothes smelled like mildew. Even old photos, the ones I thought would survive anything, were destroyed. I sat there in the middle of the mess, and for the first time in years, I cried. Not the neat kind of crying, but the ugly, hiccuping sobs that leave your face raw. This house, my house, was supposed to be my freedom. Instead, it had shackled me with a problem I didn't know how to fix. The bills begin by the end of the week. The reality of my new life came crashing down. A plumber came to inspect the damage. He was a kind, dyed older man, the type who looked like he'd seen everything. When he walked through the basement, he shook his head slowly. "This isn't new," he said. "These cracks have been here for years. Looks like someone slapped paint over the water stains to hide them. I'll be honest, this foundation is compromised. You'll need serious work done if you want to stop it from flooding again." I swallowed hard. "How much are we talking?" He hesitated, scratching his chin. "Tens of thousands, minimum." The words knocked the air from my lungs. Tens of thousands. I had emptied most of my savings just for the down payment. When I told Mom, her response was ice water. "Mom, don't be dramatic, Emma. Every homeowner deals with repairs. This is part of being an adult." "Me, tens of thousands of dollars, Mom. I don't have it." "Mom, well, maybe you shouldn't have stretched yourself so thin. Daniel did his part finding you a bargain. You're the one who has to make it work." Her voice dripped with a quiet judgment, like this was all my fault. When I called Daniel, hoping for at least some sympathy, he was worse. "Daniel, look, I already told you. It's not that bad. The inspector must be exaggerating. They do that, you know, to get more money. Besides, it's not like you can back out now. You signed the papers." "Me, Daniel, you sold me this house. You were supposed to protect me." "Daniel, protect you. I got you a deal no one else could. You should be thanking me, not blaming me because you're overwhelmed. Thanking him." The words burned. Isolation over the next month. My life unraveled piece by piece. The mortgage bill arrived, sharp and merciless, on top of my already mounting repair costs. My credit cards ballooned as I paid for emergency fixes I couldn't afford. At night, I lay awake, listening to the groans of the house, the faint drip of water somewhere I couldn't locate, and the constant pounding of my own heart. Friends stopped visiting after the second time I broke down mid-conversation about money. "You'll figure it out," they said, their voices tinged with discomfort, their smiles brittle. They didn't know what else to say. At work, my performance slipped. My boss noticed, but I couldn't explain that I wasn't lazy or careless. I was drowning. I felt more alone than I had in my entire life. The discovery one night, unable to sleep, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, digging into public property records. My fingers shook as I typed in the address of my house, and there it was. The house had been foreclosed a year ago. It had sat unsold because of major water damage, noted clearly in the file. Then, 6 months ago, it was purchased at a fraction of the cost by none other than Daniels LLC. My brother hadn't found me a steal. He had flipped the house himself, painting over the scars, hiding the truth, and selling it directly to me for profit. I stared at the screen, my stomach lurching, ball rising in my throat. My own brother had scammed me. And my mother, she had stood there, arm around me, whispering that I deserved this. She had to have known. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking so violently I thought the table might break. This wasn't just betrayal. This was orchestrated, calculated. I wanted to scream, I wanted to smash something, but more than anything, I wanted them to pay. That night, as I sat alone in the kitchen, a single thought anchored itself in my chest. They had underestimated me. Yes, I was hurt. Yes, I was drowning, but they had mistaken my silence for weakness. They thought I would accept this. They thought wrong, and in that moment, beneath the rot of my crumbling house, a plan began to take root. Perfect timing. This is where Emma shifts gears from helpless victim to silent strategist. Here's Chapter 4, The Path to Revenge, with a careful buildup of her anger into action. Chapter 4, The Path to Revenge. The weeks that followed were a blur of exhaustion. Every day, I went to work and pasted on a smile that fooled no one. Every night, I came home to the smell of mildew seeping through my walls, the steady reminder that my dream house was rotting around me. But beneath the despair, something else was growing, something sharper, stronger. Anger had become my constant companion, but now it had transformed into focus. If Daniel and Mom thought they could bury me under debt and shame, they had miscalculated. Gathering proof, I started quietly, methodically. Every receipt, every contractor's report, every bill went into a thick binder I bought just for this purpose. I snapped photos of the basement walls, documenting the mold as it spread like a dark cancer. I even recorded conversations with repairmen who told me, unprompted, that the damage was long-standing. At night, I revisited the property records, printing every page that connected Daniels LLC to my house. I highlighted dates, signatures, anything that showed the timeline of his purchase and quick resale. The more I gathered, the stronger I felt. Each piece of paper was a weapon. The mask I wore to Daniel and Mom, I played the role of the overwhelmed little sister. I still answered their calls, though less frequently. When Daniel asked how I was holding up, I mumbled something about trying to manage. When Mom lectured me about being grateful, I bit my tongue and let her. They thought I was breaking. They thought they had silenced me with debt and guilt. But inside, I was sharpening my knives. The other victims one evening, while combing through online reviews of Daniel's real estate business, I noticed something odd. Buried in the comments were subtle complaints, mentions of hidden issues, rushed sales, things not disclosed, nothing explosive, but enough to make me curious. I reached out privately to a woman who had left a vague one-star review. To my surprise, she responded within hours. Her story spilled out. Daniel had sold her a perfect starter home that turned out to have electrical problems so severe her family couldn't live there for months. She had never taken legal action because she felt overwhelmed, but the bitterness in her words mirrored my own. I contacted 2 more reviewers. Both had eerily similar stories, rushed deals, hidden problems. Daniel brushing off their concerns once the papers were signed. It wasn't just me. Daniel wasn't a charming realtor who had made one mistake. He was a predator in a suit. Planting seeds the next time I saw Mom, she was at the house, uninvited as always, fussing about the yard. "Mom, you still haven't trimmed these hedges, Emma," The neighbors must think you don't care about appearances. You should ask Daniel for help. Me, forcing a smile, don't worry. I'm figuring things out, slowly but surely. She looked at me with that mix of pity and superiority that always made me feel 12 years old again. I let her think she was winning, but as she prattled on, I was already imagining the look on her face when the truth came out, when her golden son's perfect reputation shattered. The lawyer finding the right lawyer took time. Most brushed me off after a brief consultation, warning that cases against family were messy. But then I met a mess. Harrington, a sharp, steel-eyed woman who had built her career exposing real estate fraud. I laid the binder on her desk, my hands trembling. She flipped through the documents, nodding occasionally, her expression unreadable. When she finally closed it, she leaned back in her chair. Miss Harrington, you've done more groundwork than half the clients I've seen. This isn't just negligence, Emma. This is fraud. Your brother concealed known defects for profit, and if your mother helped, she's complicit. Hearing the word fraud spoken aloud lit something inside me. I wasn't just imagining it. I wasn't crazy. Me, so what do I do? MS Harrington, smiling slightly, we build a case, slowly, quietly, and when we're ready, we strike. Quiet revenge, I walked out of her office into the crisp evening air, the weight on my chest lighter than it had been in months. For the first time since buying the house, I felt control returning, not over the crumbling walls or the leaking pipes, but over the story itself. Daniel thought he had written the ending already, me drowning in debt, clinging to his pity. Mom thought I would fold under guilt and shame. But they were wrong. I wasn't folding. I was waiting. And when the time came, my revenge wouldn't be loud. It would be meticulous. It would be devastating. That night, I sat in my ruined basement with my binder in my lap, flipping through the pages of evidence. The air smelled of mildew, but for once I didn't flinch, because beneath that smell was the scent of something else rising. Justice, and it was getting closer. The day finally came, not with the fiery explosion I had once imagined, but with the quiet inevitability of a storm long foretold. It began with a single letter, a notice of legal action filed against Daniel for fraud. The lawyer, MS. Harrington, had been meticulous, crafting the case with the precision of a surgeon. Every document, every receipt, every record I had gathered was now evidence. When Daniel received the summons, he called me immediately, his voice sharp with fury. Daniel, what the hell are you doing, Emma? Do you have any idea what this could do to me? Me, calmly, I think you know exactly what you did to me. And now everyone else will too. For once, his charm didn't work. His tone cracked, anger bleeding through the polished veneer he wore like armor. Cracks in the golden boy, the lawsuit shook more than just Daniel's confidence. Whispers began to spread in the community. Other clients came forward, emboldened by my case. Stories of hidden damage, rushed contracts, and broken promises surfaced like rot beneath a fresh coat of paint. Daniel's once gleaming reputation dulled quickly. Realtors live on trust, and once it's gone, it never returns. Mom tried to intervene, of course. She showed up at my house one evening, her face tight with a mixture of anger and desperation. Mom, Emma, drop this nonsense. He's your brother. Family doesn't do this to each other. Me, coldly, family doesn't sell each other lies for profit. Mom, you're being vindictive. He was just trying to help you. Me, help me by trapping me in debt, by destroying my savings. No, Mom, he helped himself, and you stood right beside him. Her mouth opened, but no words came. For the first time in my life, she looked small to me, diminished, stripped of the authority she had always wielded like a weapon. I closed the door before she could recover. Courtroom showdown, the courtroom smelled of old wood and dust, the kind of place where truth seemed to echo louder. I sat beside MS. Harrington, binder in hand, my heart hammering like a drum. Daniel stood across the room, sharp suit, perfect hair, that same confident smirk. But his eyes darted, restless. He wasn't untouchable anymore. The judge listened as MS. Harrington laid out the evidence, the foreclosure records, the repair invoices, the proof of mold painted over, the testimonies of contractors. Each piece stacked higher and higher until even I felt overwhelmed by the weight of it all. Then came the testimony from other clients. One by one, they painted the same picture: Daniel hiding damage, rushing paperwork, pocketing commissions while families suffered. By the time it was over, the smirk had vanished from his face. When the judge delivered the verdict, I barely breathed. Daniel was found guilty of fraud, ordered to pay restitution, fined heavily, and stripped of his Realtor license. The golden boy had fallen. Aftermath news travels fast in small communities. Daniel's downfall became gossip over coffee, whispered judgments in grocery store aisles. Mom stopped showing her face in public, for a while her proud smile replaced by tight lips and downcast eyes. For me, life didn't magically become easy. The house still needed work, the bills didn't vanish, and I carried scars, emotional and financial. That would take years to heal. But something had shifted. When I walked through my home now, I no longer saw only betrayal. I saw strength. Every crack I patched, every wall I scrubbed free of mold, was a reminder that I had survived, that I had rebuilt not just a house, but myself. And when I finally sold the house, at a fair price, to a buyer who knew its full history, I did so with my head high. The money I earned wasn't freedom in itself, but it was closure. A different kind of home. On the last night before leaving, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, just like Daniel had once painted in his false sales pitch. The air was cool, the street quiet, the stars scattered above. I thought of the girl who had walked into this house months ago. Why? Died and hopeful, ready to believe in promises whispered by family. She had been naive, too trusting, but the woman leaving tonight was different. Hardened, yes, but also sharper. Stronger. Betrayal had broken me, but standing back up had rebuilt me into someone unshakable. I whispered into the night, not to Daniel, not to Mom, but to myself, never again. Then I closed the door behind me, keys in hand, and stepped forward toward a life no one would write for me but me.